you believe in angels? A few. Have you ever been visited by an angel? And how would you know? Author Betty King, in her book, It Takes Two Mountains to Make a Valley, writes, I think I saw one the other day right in the middle of Costco. I know that is an unlikely place to see anything of an angelic nature. I'm not really sure I've ever seen an angel before. Maybe she wasn't, but she sure acted like one. My husband and I found a parking place and made our way into the Monster Warehouse discount store, a place where you can find anything in this world that you possibly want. You can buy gigantic cans, boxes, and packages of food that go stale before two people can possibly consume them. You need a van to haul the stuff and a 3-car garage to store it when you get home. It was a weekend, and of course, everybody and their brother was there. I, of course, was on my 3-wheel motorized scooter, me being a little old lady and having MS. Wheels are a necessity for me. Well, we spent more time looking around and making lunch out of those little food samples they offer than we did buying. But eventually we took our few items and made our way toward the front where we headed for the cattle chutes, or some people call them the checkout lanes. We fell in line, and at just that time, a baby started crying as if it had been refused something it thought extremely necessary. You know, one of those screams that climbs up and down your spine? Well, it didn't stop. It just kept on going and getting closer and closer. When I realized it was right behind me, I turned, swiveled my seat around. There was a little dark-haired girl in her mother's arms. She was very unhappy, and neither her mother nor her grandmother could satisfy what ailed her. Nothing they could say or do seemed to faze her in the least as she continued her shrill serenading. In the midst of all the commotion, I sat there wishing there was something I could do to help appease this little dark-haired doll when along came an angel, if I ever saw one. She was a little old lady, plainly dressed, walking with a cane. She walked right up to the mother and the little brown-haired girl, and the crying immediately ceased. She began to talk soft and sweet in a low voice and touched the child's hand ever so gently. The baby smiled and reached out to finger the white-haired halo that crowned the old lady's face. The encounter lasted just 2 or 3 minutes, and the child was in awe, and as was I, watching God bring together love that spanned generations and celestial realms. No, I didn't see any wings or hear any music. There were no trumpets or harps playing. There were no bright lights or cosmic rays, but I did hear a soft voice, saw a shining smile as it lit up the face of a sweet little child, and witnessed a white-haired angel using a cane as she delivered a message from God. Maybe it is true. You can find anything in or out of this world that you need or want at Costco. A great Christian once said, millions of spiritual creatures walk the earth unseen, both when we wake and when we sleep. All these with ceaseless praise, God's works enact both day and night. This is what I'd like to talk about this morning, angels. And I've chosen this subject for a couple of reasons. First of all, of course, angels are a major topic within the Bible. To understand that they show up frequently and so forth, we need to understand what they're about. Secondly, we're currently, in the midst of a period in our culture where there's tremendous interest in angels. Just the most casual walk through almost any craft or card or bookstore reveals our current obsession with angels. A wealth of angel paraphernalia is for sale. There's big business in angels nowadays, and so I believe it's important that we make sure we have our facts straight, But thirdly, and most importantly, I've chosen this subject because next week we begin the season of Advent in preparation for Christmas. It's a time traditionally, of course, devoted to thoughts of angels. And this year in worship, our text each week will focus on the angelic visitations that sort of frame the nativity story. So this is sort of a lead-in to that, to get us ready for it. This is our subject this morning, angels. And I'd like to address this subject in 2 parts. Part 1, just the facts, ma'am, Some basic information regarding angels. And then part 2, practical application. What does all this actually do for us in our daily lives? So, part 1, basic information. What is an angel? Well, an angel is a spiritual, some say supernatural being created by God. It is the subject of some debate whether they were created before the universe was made or during its creation. But whatever, they are a company of created beings, great in number. And in this, I would just note that when a human being dies, they do not become an angel. Those who die in the faith take on certain qualities of angels, being spiritual and eternal and so forth. However, an angel is a separate creation, and technically for a human to become an angel is a demotion. In the spiritual hierarchy, it is God, human beings, angels. As Paul tells us, in the end, we will judge the angels. Now, what do angels do? Well, the word angel in both the Old and New Testament essentially means messenger or ambassador. It's someone acting as God's representative. And in this capacity, if you look across the Bible, you'll see the angels serve a whole variety of functions, performing many different tasks. They bring messages from God. They release revelation and dreams, and understanding. They give guidance and direction. They bring deliverance out of hardship and captivity. They provide protection, impart strength, release God's healing, conduct war, guard the entrances of the Garden of Eden and of hell, and they care for believers at the time of death. And ultimately, of course, in all this, they continually praise and worship God. And as an aside, I would just note that technically speaking, nowhere in the Bible is the notion of a guardian angel specifically mentioned. Rather, what we have are a bunch of inferences, say by Jesus, in which, speaking about children, he says, "Take care that you do not despise any one of these little ones, for I tell you, in heaven, their angels continually see the face of my Father." Now, it's unclear if this refers only to children or to adults as well, whether it refers to specific angels assigned to specific people or just to a general group that's watching over all of us, whether they're always there or with us or whether they come and go, whatever. But whatever, this is the nucleus from which the idea of a guardian angel concept has been extrapolated. It's clear they are watching over us, but how they do this is a little bit less clear. Which leads us into, finally, what are angels like? Well, this is particularly hard to pin down. As unique an individual as you and I, so are they. Some have wings, and some do not. But wings or not, it doesn't seem to affect their flying or their appearing and disappearing. All are spiritual and invisible, but some are able to incarnate, that is, to take on physical form. Some appearing as pure light, some as fire, some in garments of white, some as ordinary human beings in street clothes. Some are like Cary Grant in The Bishop's Wife, and some are more like Clarence in It's a Wonderful Life. They have free will. The devil and his demons are angels who rejected God and God's authority over them and thus fell from heaven. Some play musical instruments, although curiously, I would just note that nowhere in the Bible do we get a reference to any angel playing a harp, the way we normally picture them, right? Rather, what we get are mentions of them always playing trumpets, right? So it would seem that they are part of the wind section of God's orchestra, not the strings, right? I like to work that in as a wind player, of course, Some are sweet, some are tough. There are angels in the Bible you wouldn't want to meet down a dark alley, right? So when you hear a parent refer to their child as my little angel, know that you can rightly say that whether the kid is a sweetheart or a holy terror. Both fit, right? In all, it's clear that angels may be present and unperceived at any time, and more likely present than not present. The punchline to all this being that if you believe in angels and believe that you have been visited by one, do not necessarily assume that you are crazy. Quite the contrary. Trust me, you still may be crazy in other ways, but But regarding angelic visitations, there's a very strong biblical foundation. The key issue being that the way to make sure that which visited you was an angel is very simply to ask, is what they brought me in keeping with the love of God in Jesus Christ? There has to be that continuity. An angel's purpose in all cases is to forward the work of God's salvation, to help us on to God. As it says in the final line of our text today, in which the author has been discussing the whole work of salvation in Jesus Christ and the place of angels within that, he says, "Are not all angels spirits in the divine service, sent to serve for the sake of those who are to inherit salvation?" That's their job. Spirits in the divine service. Basically, their job is to look after us, to identify those ways that we are going away from God, and to get us back onto the right path. They have a major part in that kind of work. It's like, it's said that one day God was looking down at earth and he saw, all the mischievous behavior that was going on. And so he called one of his angels to go to earth for a time. And when the angel returned, he told God, "Yes, Lord, it is bad. 95% of the people are misbehaving, and only about 5% are not. God thought about it for a moment and said, maybe I better send out another angel for a second opinion. So God called another angel, sent him to earth for a time too. When this angel returned, he went to God and he said, yes, it's true. The earth is in decline. 95% are misbehaving, but about 5% are being good. God was not pleased. So he decided to send an email to the 5% who were good, because he wanted to encourage them and give them a little something to help keep them going. Now, do you know what the email said? No? Okay, I was just wondering. I didn't get one either. You know? Sorry. They're here to help us along because we lose our way, okay? You know? Spirits in the divine service. The angel's job is to help us on to God. So how can we help this along? It's part 2, practical application. With this basic background, the question now becomes, what does this do for us? You know, what does this all mean in our daily lives? Well, I'd like to offer a couple of thoughts on actually putting this biblical concept into action in our lives, or how to open our lives more to God's care through his angels. I'd like to offer a couple suggestions, 3 basic rules for living with angels. Rule number 1, expect the unexpected. The first lesson that we get out of all of this is that angels are always present and active and can arrive in our lives at any time and in any form. There's no pattern, no set pattern to the appearance. They can be a warrior on the eve of the Battle of Jericho, or they can be a friendly young man greeting mourners in a graveyard on Easter morning. There's no set pattern. This is the first fundamental lesson we have to get about angels in our midst, but it's also, it's the first challenge. Do you remember the passage from a little later in the book of Hebrews that Joe preached on a couple of weeks ago? You know, the text, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for in so doing many have entertained angels unaware. Notice the point. Angels are right there, but we tend to miss them. Why? Well, part of it is simply that we're not tuned into the spiritual. As we've noted so often in the past, we tend to be so caught up in our earthly busyness and matters of the flesh that we're not even looking for the spirits. That's why we miss it. But even more, the inference seems to be that we're oblivious to the angels in our midst because they're not what we expect. They don't look like angels, right? There's no wings and white robe, and so we pass them by. They are right there, but we miss them. We're looking right at them often, but we're not seeing them. Well, note the fundamental premise in all of this, that angels are most likely to appear in our lives as strangers, as unnoticed background bit players in our daily lives. That is, they're not the people we know and we see all the time. Rather, the angels are the people, we've never met before, people who pass our lives for just a moment, never or rarely to be seen again. To spot them and to receive what they have to offer, we have to learn to focus on the unknown, generally overlooked people around us. It really asks of each of us first, how am I treating everyone that comes into my life? And even more, am I open to an angel showing up, to an angel being in any possible shape? Expect the unexpected. It's like, have you ever seen the movie Michael? It's in it, John Travolta. He plays the archangel Michael, who's come to earth for one final mission. But almost everyone, most especially those he's come to help, have a hard time believing he's an angel. Why? Because the guy is just so earthy and simple and crude even, right? He's not at all what they expected. But in the end, we discover he's exactly what they needed. He works God's wonders in a most remarkable way, and that's the point. Angels are not what you expect. The movie director here, he got it just right, An anonymous author writes, what do angels look like? Well, they look like the little old lady who returned your wallet yesterday. Like the taxi driver who told you that your eyes light up the world when you smile. Like the small child who showed you the wonder in simple things. Like the poor man who offered to share a bit of his lunch with you. Like the rich man who showed you that it really all is possible if you'll only believe. Like the big burly biker who just happened to come along and fix your car when no one else would stop. Angels come in all sizes and shapes, all ages and skin colors. Some with freckles, some with dimples, some with wrinkles, some without. Some all neat and clean, some with tattoos and piercings. They come disguised as helpers and as enemies, as wise men and as fools. They don't take life too seriously. They travel light. That's why they can fly. They leave no forwarding address. They ask nothing in return. They are hard to find when your eyes are closed, but when you choose to see, they are everywhere you look. So open your eyes and count all your angels, for you are truly blessed. Rule number 1 in living with angels, expect the unexpected. From this then, rule number 2, prepare to be challenged. Building upon this notion that angels most often come in the most unexpected ways and forms, it's important to note that they also most often come for the most unexpected purposes, right? This is another reason why we so often miss them. It's like, when most people think about angels being at work in their lives, they tend to think about being protected or being kept from danger, right? For instance, you often hear stories like, I was standing in a busy intersection, about to step across the street, when suddenly a stranger spoke to me, and I turned to respond. And with just that moment's pause, I missed being hit by a car that was careening around the corner. If that person hadn't spoken to me, I'd be dead now. It's acts of protection and care, right? And this is great. And there are events like this, just like this in the Bible, angels directly keeping people from harm. However, there are just as many, if not a lot more, events, both biblical and otherwise, in which this does not happen, right? In which the angels don't show up and protect and save. What gives then? Are we just missing our guardians, or are they slacking off on the job or something? Right? No, we need to understand that protecting us is just one of the angelic tasks, and it is ultimately subservient, that is only put into effect when it applies to their primary task, which is to get our lives in line with the will and the workings of God. That is, they may come to protect, but they may just as much, if not even more, come to challenge and to push us and to remind us of things. As noted, if you look across the whole Bible, you see a whole bunch of different things that angels do. Not all of it is comforting and nice. Much of it is difficult and very painful, but needed to truly get our lives to God. Angels serve us, but they ultimately serve God to get our lives in line with the Lord. Perhaps the most familiar example that we will be considering in the weeks ahead is this. Remember, the angel Gabriel comes to a teenage girl to tell her that she is to give birth to the Messiah. This did not get her out of trouble, right? It got her right into it. A noted scholar writes, "People are so hungry for the transcendent nowadays that they will take it on any terms they can get. My only problem with the current angel fad is that so many people write about angels in a very individualistic way, as if guardian angels are going to take care of you every moment of the day. My observation is that such guardian angels seem to work best in middle-class homes, say helping you to find your car keys when you're late for work. They don't work in the ghetto very well. They are not protecting children from drive-by shootings. There's a trivialization of evil here. The biblical understanding of angels is not that they keep you from getting into trouble. No. They help deliver God's message about the divine vocation and help us to fulfill it." Essentially, the second point here is that if you really want to be able to recognize angels and to receive what they have for you, you have to accept that they may come to challenge and to push you as much as to comfort and to protect you. That their purpose is not just to keep you safe, but to get your life working with God. Sometimes to remind you of who you are and what you need to do. It's not always sweetness and light. If we won't accept this, the work of angels is lost upon us. A noted preacher writes, "We so often hear the expression, the voice of an angel, that I got to wondering what an angel sounds like. So I did some research and discovered that an angel's voice sounds remarkably like a person yelling, 'Hurry up.' Prior to my research, I thought that the voice of an angel would be beautiful, but the words 'get up' and 'hurry' are rarely beautiful, especially at 7 a.m. in the morning. Yet the Bible records many instances of angels saying exactly these words. In fact, they are one of the most common things that angels say. An angel comes to Peter in jail and says, 'Rise quickly.' An angel says to Gideon, 'Arise and go in thy might.' An angel says to Elijah, 'Arise and eat.' An angel appears to Joseph in a dream when Herod is slaughtering the infants and says, 'Go quickly.' An angel appears to Philip and says, 'Arise and go now.' On and on. Curious this. The voice of an angel is not necessarily beautiful and soothing, but often commanding and pushing, trying to get our lives up and going and on with God. How do we need this? Listen carefully, and you can hear the voice of angels above the contemporary din of the world, a voice that ought to get us out of our lounge chairs and our comfortable beds. Arise and go quickly." It has been said that angels often appear when they are least expected and for the reason that is least expected. That's one of the wonders of angels. Not simply calming us on a scary night, but fighting with us to change us into who we must be. Rule number 2 for living with angels, prepare to be challenged. And then finally, rule number 3, live confidently. In the end, returning to where we began, the crucial place of all of this in our life in Christ, particularly as the counterpoint to the forces of evil that seek to take Christ's love from us, that is the basics, say, for our text today. The great overall point in all of this is that simply, at all times and in all places, we have all this going for us. Angels in the divine service sent to serve for the sake of those who are to inherit salvation. This is finally the subtext in all angelic scripture, essentially, that we are so often missing, that we're oblivious to all this wonderful stuff that's happening all around us, that's happening for us, We need to wake up to it, to simply be conscious that it's there. Live confidently and joyfully. Angels are all around, working for you always. It's like a scene from the story of the prophet Elisha. Elisha and his servant are facing this huge enemy army. The servant is terrified, right? Elisha, he's totally calm and cool. He's like, Elisha says, don't worry, there's a lot more of us than there are of them. The servant is like, are you kidding? There are only 2 of us, and there's hundreds of them. Elisha prays, Lord, open his eyes. And with that, the servant's eyes are open, and he sees that they are actually surrounded by an army of angels on flaming chariots of fire. There's nothing to worry about. In the biblical concept of angels, the final lesson is to live confidently, to know that you always have this whole spiritual army fighting for you, that you are never in any situation alone. Just open your heart to it, and God will reach you. In closing, one author writes, Lord, forgive me. I missed the opportunity. There he was, holding the door open as people continually passed by to enter. I hurried through the door, but did notice him. He was slovenly dressed and looked quite disheveled. He also looked as though he could use a meal. A thought so brief popped into my head. Could this be an angel? I can't explain why the thought came to me, but it did. I rushed through the open doorway, trying to beat the others into the line for service. Lord, I did look back. How long was it before I did? Surely it could not have been more than 5 seconds, but it was already too late. He was not there anymore. Again, the thought came to me, inspired by the Bible. Could this have been an angel? What did God say? Something about entertaining angels unaware? I so desperately wanted some contact from God in my life at this time, with all the troubles we were having, some reassurance that he was there. Was I just wishful thinking? I returned outside minutes later with bags of hot food for the family. I asked my husband, did you see a man standing there holding the door open? He said no, he hadn't seen anyone holding the door. I tried to get, honey, didn't you see him? He held the door open for me as we went inside. You had to have seen it. Again, he said he didn't notice anybody. I didn't ask again. He hadn't seen it. Perhaps he was not paying attention. I found it hard to believe that he didn't see it because he was standing directly across from the entryway to the place. He could not have missed it. I will never be sure if this was a mortal or an angel that held the door open for others and me that day. He had stood there and not asked for anything. I do not even know if I said thank you as he held the door open. I think he was waiting for someone willing enough to stop and to reach out to him. Some week later, I received another chance. This time it was a woman rummaging through a trash dumpster outside of a restaurant. I didn't wait. I went up to her and pressed some cash into her hand. But I couldn't leave. She wanted to talk. She wanted me to know that she hadn't always been like this. She had been a somebody once. Although I was in a hurry, I stopped and I listened. It wasn't so much about what she said, it was the way that she said it. She was brokenhearted and despondent. She wanted me to know something about her as a person. By the end, she was crying, and I was practically in tears myself. I told her that everything would be okay. I told her that God loved her and that he would make a way for her. I didn't know what else to say. I felt a little awkward, but she didn't seem to mind. She just wanted someone to share with, someone to listen. As she began to walk away, never to be seen in my life again, the last thing that I said to her was, "Dare to believe in God." And as she walked away, she suddenly turned and with a smile replied, "You too, dear. You too. Thank you." To this day, I'm not entirely sure if this was an angel or just an ordinary mortal being. I suppose I will never be entirely sure, but whatever, one thing I know, God seemed to be reaching out through this person by drawing me to reach out to her. Most miraculously of all, in the end, my own words became the message proclaimed back to my own heart, just when I needed it most, a reminder, dare to believe. Who was ministering to whom? Billy Graham once said, Christians should never fail to sense the operation of angelic glory. It forever eclipses the world of demonic powers as the sun does a candle's light. Next Sunday, we begin the holy season of Advent. It's a celebration of our Savior's arrival in the world for our salvation. Throughout these sacred days ahead, and indeed in all our days, open your heart to sense the operation of the divine. Tune in to the world of angels seeking to help you on to God. Expect the unexpected, prepare to be challenged, and live confidently. Let us join together in singing our closing hymn, number 157, Jesus Shall Reign. Would you please stand?